Hey, it's good to see you today. My name is Philip Thomas, pastor of Journey here in Elgin. And this is Tom Burns with Redeemed Idiot. And he continues to go through Revelation. We on Sunday mornings are now in the book of Nehemiah, going through Nehemiah. It's interesting, and people can believe what they want, but we don't coordinate with what you're talking about in Revelation and what I do on Sunday morning. But there's a lot of correlation, and I think that points to we've talked on the Revelation. If you're interested in Revelation, I'd encourage you to start going through, and you can watch all of the episodes. We do a similar thing where we recap his Wednesday night deal. I think there's a reason that there's starting to be some overlap in the things that I'm preaching, whether it was from the Sermon on the Mount. I mean, talk about two different series, right?
Uh-huh.
Sermon on the Mount and then Nehemiah, right? You wouldn't normally put those together. However, we're seeing a lot of overlap, which may point to the reality that we're in that season, right? That things are changing. Would you agree with that? Kind of as you see, are you seeing the same similarities?
Yeah, I definitely am. And I think this is proving a point that the Bible isn't just a bunch of stories. It's a singular message that no matter where you are, there's still the message of redemption.
Mm-hmm.
The world has fallen, and this is how it's going to get recovered.
Yes.
And when you did Sermon on the Mount, I mean, in Revelation, I went back to Sermon on the Mount. So here's what this applies to here. And now you're in Nehemiah. And on my last one, I was talking about some things. And boom, this week, you're like, boom, here's Nehemiah, and brought things out. It's like, it's all the same thing. If we see it as one whole, it makes sense.
Yes. Yeah. So
it's great.
This is the Day After podcast. If you listen to yesterday's sermon, in some ways, this was a two-part sermon, both on Nehemiah chapter 4. What I ended up doing is really focusing on the reality of an enemy,
right?
It's easy to preach Nehemiah and just talk about the enemy that he was facing, right? But I believe that what we should do is we should take those principles and apply them to today.
Mm-hmm.
Just like we're not literally rebuilding a wall. However, we need to be building the walls in our life of securing who our foundation is, where our faith is, that gives us strength and security. And then we can go outside of that wall into the world around us to share the message of Christ. But we need that strong wall because it's not easy to do these things, right? And we don't want our wall to start crumbling. So that's all applying the principles we find from when Nehemiah was written 2,500 years ago, right, to today.
Right.
So when I started talking about the enemies, and we talked about this last week specifically, it said Nehemiah is going back, and the people groups around Jerusalem, which some of them had direct ties to the Jewish people, right? Like we're cousins, the Samaritans, if you will. But then many also were people that had been pushed out by Joshua and the Israel whenever they came in, right? Those people groups that had been pushed out. But they're all part of the same people group, right? It'd be like Texan, because of course Texan is God's chosen people. So, but Texans, and then there's Oklahomans, and then there's Louisianians, and then there's New Mexicans, right? And we actually all share very similar things,
right?
But there's something very unique about Texas. And frankly, we piss off all the Oklahomans, Louisianians, and New Mexicans, right? That's a silly example, but there's some truth to it, right?
Right. Yeah.
This is the same basic group of people that have very similar cultural heritage, right? But the people of Israel, the Jewish people, have been called out of that culture to replace it with a biblical one, right? And that's where the tension started, and then it just kept growing. So now You have the people of Israel that have been, have suffered consequences for not holding on to their biblical values,
Right.
for being idolatrous, and they're experiencing the punishment of exile. And now Nehemiah is coming back to rebuild, and all of those enemies, as I was reading them, they're like, we can't let this happen, right? Because they were against that biblical foundation, right? And so it specifically said that they wanted to destroy the people. They did not want anything to go well with them, and that they wanted to cause confusion, right? So I applied that to today. One truth being, there are ideologies and beliefs out there that go against God, that want it destroyed, not that are just different, but that actually want to destroy it. Hadn't thought this through. For example,
Okay.
there are many religions out there that I believe are false. I believe there's only one true God, right?
Like the Church of Scientology is a good example.
The Church of Scientology, yeah. That's actually even a better example. The Church of Scientology, they actually are not actively trying to destroy Christianity. They're morphing it. It is not accurate. In fact, it is way different.
Yeah.
But they are not hostile to Christianity. They could care less if Christianity continues to thrive, because guess what? We're not going to stomp them out. Now, I'm going to preach against the things that they believe, but I'm not going to go destroy them.
Right.
Okay, that's one way. You could say the same thing with Buddhism.
Yeah.
Buddhism could care less if Christianity thrives.
Yeah.
Right? But it is a false religion. It is deceiving people. I believe it comes from demonic roots, but it is not overtly anti-God. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
It's not trying to destroy.
No, not at all.
There are ideologies that are overtly trying to destroy, that have no desire to live at peace, right? Buddhism, Christian Scientology would be just fine, just living, hey, y'all just let us do our thing. In fact, we won't even encroach upon the Christian message, right? They're fine with that.
Yeah.
There are some ideologies that are not, and I've kind of narrowed it down to try to simplify it to two. Last week, we talked about the Marxist kind of view, this oppressor versus oppressed view that is really seeing its fruits in communism, also in Nazism. That was part of it there. Both of those went after the church, went after Christianity. And now we are seeing...
But they wasn't rooted in faith.
No.
It was just ideology in itself.
It's
exactly.
In that ideology.
That's a good point.
Yes. And now we are seeing that with the rise of the LGBTQ movement. That is from queer critical theory, which is a Marxist viewpoint, right? It's an ideology. Please go back and listen to 2 weeks ago we really hammered this a lot. I believe that ideology is an enemy to the things of God and doesn't want to live side by side. It wants to force God out of the picture, right? The God that we believe in.
Right.
That is one of the enemies that we face.
Right.
But there is another, and that's the one we talked about, and specifically Islam.
Yep.
So, what were your thoughts as you were listening to the sermon? I've talked about Islam before, but this was definitely a little bit more in depth, trying to recognize this ideology that Islam upholds is actually anti-God. There is no room for merger here. Eventually.
No, I'm glad you went down. I'm not even gonna say a rabbit hole. I'm glad you brought that up, because I think it's a good point. And to where you said here in the beginning that we don't collaborate.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's an emphasis, because I mentioned it when we finished up Laodicea, and that was the point at the end, Islam is essentially going to be the problem.
Mhm.
And then and that's why we're different. You're in Nehemiah, bringing the realities to the world today, what they were talking about then, and it boils down to what you're saying. It's Islam. And you brought up a lot of good points. You're bringing up the wars that were going on where Islam started. And then the map you showed is what is the Levant, is the understanding of Levant, what everything they conquered, and they want to reestablish and retake over, that they are actively doing today, just in a different framework.
Yes.
And their ideological belief system is to be the one and only religion on the earth, and that is, by that, Christians, believers, even if you don't believe in Christianity, they want, if you're just a person that's an atheist, doesn't matter. They're gonna, you need to, how do I say this?
Submit.
You will submit. They want, to submit to their belief.
Islam means to submit.
Yeah, right? Exactly.
It is.
It's something we need to be watching out for. We need to be looking at, just because of their growth, what they're doing. And you brought up the truth of history, that we don't learn in school and stuff. It was like, because people go back to the Crusades.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, the Christians were the bad guys.
Right.
You might want to see where all this came from and what steeped into it. So it needs to be said. I mean, I think there's something that we somebody yell at me for saying this, we pussyfoot around all the time.
Yeah.
But it's just real. It's just reality. We need to see things. Now, whether or not you're pro-Islam, not Islam, at least see the truth of things that have been going on and make a decision.
Yeah.
But don't go blindly because you have a society that's like, oh, everybody's good, everybody's loving, and all these things good. No, not everything is loving, good, and great. And if you can't see that if we're people here in America, can't see that within our own country, it's not like everybody's like, oh, Trump's the greatest, and everybody think Biden's the greatest, or Kamala Harris, or whomever. There is a division. There are problems in everything, all these ideological things that are happening in our lives.
Yeah.
You just brought up the big one that is global.
Yes. So, and
I hope I didn't say too much.
No. It is because of the culture that we live in and the society that we live in. It makes it harder to talk about these and that's why I try to use that word ideology a lot.
Yes.
So just as I talked about with the LGBTQ, I don't think the ideology behind that does not care about the individual person and their lifestyle.
Right.
It is an insidious ideology. Now, there are lots of individuals within that who are trying to stand up for people of different orientations and things like that. Also, we have to make sure that we do, this is part of loving your enemy, is that we give the opportunity for a separation between the individual and the ideology, right? Because there are many individuals who are blinded by an ideology. By the way, they would say the same thing about us, that I'm blinded by my Christian ideology. Okay. So I recognize there are a lot of people that are blinded by their ideology, and they think that they're actually doing what is good and what is right. Our goal should not be to destroy them. Our goal should be to hopefully open their eyes to the true redemptive power of Christ, right? But that is very hard to do because it is hard to separate the ideology from the individual. But we have to take up our cross. We have to bear that burden, that difficulty of doing that, so that we never come across as everyone who is part of this ideology is just evil. No, they are deceived. They are blinded. We need to do what we can to try to allow God to open their eyes. That's hard. Okay, so that's with the LGBTQ. I believe it's the same with Islam. It's a little bit different because it's a more formal religion. The LGBTQ movement, make no mistake, is a religion. It is an ideology. It's a
belief.
It is a belief.
Their faith.
Yes.
A faith. Yeah.
That is against God. Islam is, we all know that. It's very formal, things like that. So it is different, but I believe that Muslims are created in the image of God, that God desires for them to find redemption. How? through the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ and coming to a saving knowledge of him, right?
Right.
They have been deceived by this very effective religious organization. And we do have to make sure that we, on an individual level, that we view people not as the enemy, but that we try to do things to open their eyes to the truth of Christ.
Right.
However, we also have to acknowledge the reality that this ideology of Islam is a danger, and its sole goal is to undo the things of God. Right? Now, it's even more insidious because it actually uses a lot of the same language as we do. Now, there's also fractures, just like there's fractures within Christianity, right? There's fractures within Islam.
Yeah,
right?
there is.
Sunni, Shia, we're not going to get into that. Those are two big ones. But then there's fractures within those, right? And so you have that reality. Most of Islam is not the ISIS type of Islam.
No.
However, whenever you're at 2 billion people, you can have a small percentage of people that are the ISIS type, and they're going to do a lot of damage in the world, and we have seen that, right?
So if I can pause you
Yes.
right there, because that's a really good point, because you're talking about ideologies.
Yes.
So that's a good point. Like, so if you take ISIS with us in Islam, which is Sunni, because you brought up the two different sides. So you got the Sunni, the division. Sunnis generally in all these countries, the ones that just live normal lives and are not part of ISIS, have a problem with the ideology of ISIS and what they are physically doing by taking an extreme interpretation of the Quran. So that's an ideology. So they're over there going, because they're fighting with us. I've been over there, obviously. We have fought alongside them, been with them against ISIS. They're fighting that ideology, not the Sunni belief, but the ideology of what they are believing and what they're doing. So that's the difference between an ideology and that's what an ideology is. Even though they're the same thing, same belief, same God or same Allah, same sect, the Sunnis. Nope, your ideology is wrong. Going to the LGBTQ thing. The ideology of what they're believing being taught is wrong. The people aren't the problem, and who they are. It's what you're following.
The people have been deceived, and
and
now, correct me if I'm wrong, but the overall goal of both the Sunni and the Shia is ultimate conquest of the world.
No, it
to
is
bring them to right.
Yeah, that's what they believe. They are the ones that are going to eventually conquer.
It's the way that it's going about it. And
it's
so,
their version of the apocalypse.
Yes. So all of this is complicated, but it is very important. And some people listening to this may say, "Well, why are we even talking about this? We've got enough problems on our own." Completely agree with that. Here's why I am concerned. One, I think there's scriptural things that point to some of these, and I know you are going to get into that even more as we keep going into to Revelation. But I also see within the church there's an allowing of these ideologies to influence, which is extremely dangerous because these ideologies are not compatible with the truth of Christ, and they want to destroy. So we see this very obvious in especially the Marxist way. I'll use that term. There are many churches now. There are churches that literally have drag queen events. There are churches that fly the pride flag. There are churches, right? Okay. Well, I believe they are being deceived. They are letting an ideology that will destroy the truth of who Christ is ultimately, right? Because you just have to keep making concessions. And then finally you get to the point where it's like, well, there is no truth. Everybody just live their life, right? It's my truth. That's what happened. We are seeing that in the Christian church today.
Right. Yeah, I think you said it more than I have, but I think that's what you did, talking like that, what they call the seeker-sensitive model.
Yes.
It's marketing. They don't really care about your sexual orientation.
Yeah.
They don't care about even the ideology itself. It's like, there's money in that.
That's the very cynical view that has truth to it.
Cynical?
No, cynical but true, right?
Yeah.
No,
I'm just saying what it is.
I know, and it is, and that's the danger of that, right?
Right.
Is you let these ideologies in, they will not stop until they consume you, right? That movement, a good example of that. Okay, the LGBTQ movement has been around for a long time, right? The main goal it had for a while was gay marriage, and there were all these conversations on gay marriage, and the arguments were like, hey, what do you care about what we do in our bedroom? How's that going to impact you, right? And as you know, as Christians, we want to show love in ways that we can. It took a long time, but finally that hurdle, in an interesting way, a court just ruled that hurdle. The overall people still weren't there, but that's a different story. But all of a sudden that went, okay. Did it stop there? No, because now we're all the way to the point now where it's like, no, you're a bigot if you say that a 13-year-old doesn't have the right to cut off their healthy breast, right? That it's the same ideology that led to this, right? Because the ideology itself is going to consume. It is against the things of God, and it's just going to keep moving, right? And this is uncomfortable. It's hard, and it's hard to deal with, but we need to understand it. It's the same thing with Islam. So I'm seeing churches that have opened the door to the ideology of the pride flag, and seeing where it can easily lead. And then I'm seeing churches in a different way open the door to the other side. You know, and if you look at the previous Pope Francis within the Catholic Church, there's lots of things that he said that were very friendly is not the right word. It's more than that. It's accepting of the Islam faith and kind of a desire to bring a partnership together, right? And some of that is motivated because we don't like to see Islamophobia. You shouldn't hate someone because they're a Muslim.
No.
And you shouldn't hate someone because they're from the Middle East, right?
No.
So I understand all of that's at play here, but that's really dangerous to have official ties, and we're starting to see that play out in Christian churches in an interesting way, especially with what's going on in our culture right now. There are starting to be a lot of Christians that would agree with me politically, that would be against the woke stuff, right? All of that are seeing the nation of Israel or seeing Jews as a bigger problem than Islam.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, there are many that are saying it's because of our support of Israel that we have all these problems with Muslims. That if, right?
Yeah, that's what's being,
That is, right?
Yeah, that's what's being said.
Okay, I mean, I'm generalizing here, but I am seeing that. We're earlier on in that's an ancient attack, but we're earlier on in seeing that, and so it's not mainstream,
right?
But it is clearly there. And you may say, well, why are we talking about all this stuff? Well, it wasn't mainstream to affirm transgender children 7 years ago. Was not mainstream. Now we can't determine who can what sport, girl or boy sport you can play in. You know, it happens quick, and I am concerned seeing within the church this not acknowledging the dangerous ideology of Islam, and then actually allowing that to bring in the old anti-Semitic views and stereotypes. That is dangerous. Am I wrong to be very concerned about that?
No, not at all. I think you keep bringing up a points to this, but like in this one, last part you're talking about being anti-Semitic. We're not Jewish.
Yeah.
Me or you are not Jewish by descent, and we're not Jewish by
ethnically or
nothing. We're not. But that anti-Semitism is an ideology.
Yes.
And we're defending against those that are being ideologically hated.
Yeah.
That's wrong. Even though we don't agree with Jews on Messiah and all these things, they're not bad. You can't buy into these things.
No.
Just like when you're talking about LGBTQ, it's not the people, it's the ideology that they're following behind.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think ideology is a great word. And I hope people can grasp the concept of ideology. It's not what somebody is. It's an ideology. It's something you follow. Because not everybody in the LGBTQ falls into one of those letters.
Right.
There's just heterosexual people that follow it and buy go into it, and it pulls them further away. No, you're right. And Islam, yes, to follow that extremist ideal, that ideology, that is a problem. Now they have a problem with each other. It went all the way back to the Crusades, all the things that went on, and I get it. But even what's funny is even now today, there's more of an acceptance in these Islamic countries to Jews than there used to be.
Yeah.
And then it's funny is now we become the hating people that weren't against Jews. That a lot of Islam doesn't even hate the Jews anymore. Do they agree? Do they like each other? No. But they're not raising a lot of anti-Semitism that we are here in America. It makes no sense to me.
It doesn't make any
because
sense.
We're following some anti-Semitic ideology crap that comes back to you kind of saying that Marxist mentality.
Yes. Yeah. No, and it all, and again,
we're sheeples.
We are. And that's what's crazy is you have, so I kind of identified, if you will, two ideologies that I believe are the same general enemy. They're enemies of the things of God. That we see all the way back in Nehemiah.
Yep.
One of those is what we would consider now the Marxist ideology. It is a completely secular pagan. Like there's no affirmation of an actual God.
Right.
It has religious tenets, but it is that pagan understanding.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And what's interesting is you will have people flying pride flags, standing up for people who are Muslim, who would literally kill them. Right? If they went and flew that flag in Palestine, right, they would be killed. Now, the argument is, well, they're standing up for the oppressed everywhere, right? So it's taking, again, that everything breaks down to the oppressor-oppressed model. So who's the oppressed in the Israeli-Palestine conflict? Well, the Palestinians are the ones that are oppressed. So therefore, this group is always going to support the oppressed, even though that group of oppressed would literally behead you. So for any normal thinking person, you go, that doesn't make sense at all until you start zooming back, understanding the spiritual battle we're in, the ideologies that we're in. Both of those ideologies, the oppressor oppressed ideology, the Marxist, that ideology, and the ideology behind Islam, guess what they have in common? The one thing they have in common is their ultimate master. And their ultimate master is not Christ. It is Satan. It is demonic. They flow from an evil ideology that is opposed to the things of God.
Right.
That is why there are times that they seem to merge together, right? Because if they can merge together, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, right? So they can merge together because their ultimate enemy is the cause of Christ. Now, when they make dents into the cause of Christ, guess what's going to happen to that merger? Oh, it's going to be ugly because they will kill each other as well.
Right.
And I know there's still a lot of people, especially in our comfortable society of America, that probably think that we shouldn't be going down these roads. I think, one, we need to, because we see it in Scripture. I didn't just come up with the reason that I started going down this is because of what I'm reading in Nehemiah, right? I'm like, oh, we're facing the same spirits of ideologies that they were back then, right? And yes, so it's important for us to identify these things.
It is. And where we're screwing up in this ideological thing is being anti-Semitic. People can say reverse it, anti-Islamic, whatever. I get it. But we're steeped into what we're told today, meaning why there's a conflict between Islam and Israel.
Yeah.
And I mean, we can go some serious depths about peace deals that were made, but they rejected it. They just want them out. Islam rejected peace deals and getting land, and Israel's going to turn over land, but no, they just want them out. But what we're missing is where it actually started. Yeah. So from Abraham to Isaac was the covenant, was the promise, I'm going to give you this land. Yeah. So that was promised. And even Muhammad mentions this in one of his letters. Mm-hmm. He knows it. But Islam believes that Isaac lost the covenant, the birthright to it was called Israel right now, that he lost that, and it was given to his brother Ishmael. Yeah. And they are descendants of Ishmael. Yeah. So they believe it's their land. Yeah. But what's funny, we'll talk about this where I'm going, there's actually a letter, something that Muhammad wrote that I can't remember exactly how it said, but even through Muhammad made this, that what God said is. Yeah. Referring to Isaac, that it was that still stays in that line. Now, under Islam, they have changed that narrative to being he lost it and they want it back. Yeah. So this fight is not a modern day stupid this land, World War I, because the British Empire won, gave them this chunk of land, and now they're mad and kicked them out. No, this has been going on for a long time, and it has to go to biblical context. Yeah. It's either Isaac, what was promised to him, or it was Ishmael. They believe Ishmael, Jews believe Isaac. Yeah. That's the fight. And no one talks about this. Yeah. So it's not an ideology. It's an actual faith and belief in which one they're following. Yeah.
And what's interesting, and correct me if I'm wrong here, that Muhammad in his early, like within the first decade after receiving, the prophecy, he actually went to Jerusalem, and he was actually trying to get the Jews to convert, if you will. He was trying to get them to, but was having basically no success. And then so progressively started getting more militant. And it actually led to that there was a focus on Jerusalem, but within the first 20, 30, all of this happened within the first 20 or 30 years of Islam being formalized.
Right.
Then they turned their sights to Mecca, which at that time had a high Jewish population. And that one of the first major battles of Islam was to take Mecca and to get rid of all the Jews, because Muhammad saw that the Jews aren't going to go for Ishmael is the right. I mean, that's what it boils down to.
Kind of, yeah.
In general, and then it just started having a life of its own. Again, understanding. Look at a spiritual. This wasn't human orchestrated.
No.
This is a spiritual thing, and Satan is always about trying to cause division and chaos and to push people away from the one true God. Well, Islam has been extremely effective at doing that.
Very effective. So if you're on the outside looking in, then you have to go back and look at where all this comes from. So then make a decision, because the view you and I are taking this from is a biblical view that this land was theirs. Islam wants to take it because they think it's theirs. Now, you can go back, study both. I don't care. You study Quran, study the Bible. Make a decision, not on political, ideological thoughts that are being pushed down your throat right now to hate the Jews because there's a fight going on with Islam. Even the Crusades don't really have anything to do with this. Go back and find out why we're making these statements, that this is a promise of God to them. And that's why the Jews are standing firm to what they believe is promised for God. Islam is standing firm in what they believe was a promise to God to them. So figure out which side you want to be on, fine. But don't take the political garbage, the Marxist mentalities of this oppressive crap. It's not about oppression. It's about who's going to take over the land, which today is actually now it's the Levant. Now go study the Levant before you make stupid remarks and being anti-Semitic. It's the Jews and that's not fair because they're oppressing Palestine. You're missing the point. You're just listening to a bunch of blowhards that have no idea about what actually transpires. And even what's the guy's name? A very popular Jew that's always has podcasts, little guy.
Daniel Horowitz.
No. I can't remember.
Ben Shapiro.
Ben Shapiro.
Yes.
Okay, I mean, I listen to him, and he'll go into these narratives about it, but he doesn't even take it back to the steeping of Isaac versus Ishmael.
Yeah.
He doesn't even go back that far. He just looks at the narrative today. He develops, nice enough guy, but he develops his own ideology for us to follow in a political realm and go, well, this is why Islam's so messed up and Israel's so right. I get it. And see, this is why I'm standing not against Ben Shapiro, but I'm standing against his ideological teachings. Like, dude, you're not even taking it back to the beginning, because now you're just getting followers to hate Islam because of modern day stuff. But I get it. You're Jewish.
Sure.
You're going to have a different look on this thing. But what scares me about you, dude, is you're not going back, and you don't understand Islam enough to understand why this is happening.
Yeah.
And then now we're just narrating stuff. We get into an ideology and we just have hate.
Yeah. And we get caught in the moment.
Right.
Like right now, as we're talking, there could be bombs raining down in both Iran and in Israel.
Yes.
Right. And so we get caught talking about, well, should we support, the U.S. Getting involved military? Like, we can have those conversations, but that really has nothing to do with this big picture. What we're trying to talk about here. And I think it is vital that we understand that big picture.
And if you want to get really technical, if you want to use the term oppression, go look at a map. Go look at Israel and look at every Islamic country. Now, the reality is most Islamic countries are not trying to hurt Israel right now. They really are not.
Yeah.
It's an Iranian thing
Yes.
that has other influences. But if you want to talk about oppression, Iran really literally could crush them in a heartbeat if they – there's a lot that goes into that. We're not going to go down all that stuff.
Yeah.
But the point is, I'm talking too much. I get passionate about this stuff because we're just stupid.
Yeah.
We buy in and believe all the crap, and from narratives that get pushed out, goes out on social media. Oh, that must be the answer.
Yeah.
No, why don't you take a second and shut your mouth and go look up for yourself. Do some historical research. Go start from today. Why do they hate each other? And just keep going backwards. So you go, they think it's theirs because of Ishmael. And the Jews think it's theirs because of Isaac.
Yeah.
Now, take the Bible and take the Quran.
Yeah.
Go, okay, what did it say over here? And what does it say over here? Make a decision there. Make a smart, intelligent decision. But quit thinking it's a hate thing.
Yes.
I don't hate Islam as far as the people are concerned. I get why they're doing what they're doing, but I don't hate the people. I've been with a lot of great people that I'm scared for.
Yes.
Future.
Because they've been deceived.
Yes, they've been deceived.
And they're going to miss out on the redemption of Christ.
Exactly.
Because they've been deceived. And that's why we should care about this.
Right.
So
we can't change who we are. I'm not going to change my thing, because your point is exactly. The whole point is because of our faith, our belief in what the Bible says and who God truly is and who Christ truly is. And it's really about Christ, who he truly is, that Islam doesn't, is my concern for a people that are being deceived because they don't understand this. They don't get this. Yeah. Now people go, well, how do you know you're right? We're not going to go down that road.
Right. Yeah.
But the point is, just like Islam is trying to convert Christians and everybody else, I would like to see a conversion to people in Islam. People that I know over there is like, dude, I care about you, man. This is why it is. It's not a hate for Islam. It's a love for you, for Christ. It's that simple.
Yes. No.
Okay, I'll shut up.
No. But this is why it's important, and I want us to end on this because we're going to talk about more of this, and we're going to talk about it for sure as you go through Revelation, right? And we're going to try to flesh this stuff out. But here in Nehemiah, the one thing that I ended the message on, because I think it definitely applies to all that we've been saying, because this is overwhelming stuff, and it's a lot easier to just take the talking points of the day, whichever direction you lean, right? Or to just put your head in the sand, because it's a little terrifying, right? I think we're called for more than that, right? Because we're called to engage the culture around us. So I do see these dangers of these ideologies. I see them infiltrating the church in different ways. I see there is an acceptance of the oppressor-oppressed mentality, specifically through the LGBT movement. I see we're starting to see on one hand, especially like what Pope Francis has talked about, a softening towards Islam and basically saying, hey, all religions kind of go to God, and so Islam and Christianity, we're going to end up the same place. No, one wants to destroy the other. All right.
Yep.
So we have to be careful there. I also see that there is now a strain that is not pro-Islam, but believes that the reason that we have problems with Islam is not that their ideology is ultimately out to destroy us, but it's because we support Israel, the nation of Israel. That was kind of one of my main, that's creeping in. We've seen that in history, but it is kind of new for the church today.
Right.
And you're seeing it really happen quickly. That's why I talked about all of the conquest before the Crusades that Islam had, right? It went all the way up to France, right? And by the way, France and Spain were Catholic at the time; they were Christianized, right? And so they were fighting way before. So and by the way, there was not a nation of Israel at that time, and yet Islam was trying to destroy Christianity. It was trying to, and it eventually did destroy all the places that are mentioned in the New Testament. All the churches, right, that are mentioned in Revelation, all 7 of them were in that area. Maybe not quite all of them, but nearly all of them now are what? Muslim-controlled territories.
Yeah, it's primarily Turkey,
right?
A little bit into Syria, but yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
So Islam has been trying to push out Christianity, if you will, from the beginning. We need to recognize that. We don't blame the Jews for it.
No.
So one thing that we do moving forward is what Nehemiah said. Nehemiah chapter 4, starting in verse 14, he said, basically, there's 3 things. 1, do not be afraid of them. All right. So we cannot be afraid of this because fear leads to hating the individuals.
Right.
Right. And it leads to apathy or to just putting your head in your sand. Right. Eventually, you're going to be made to care. Right. That's the effectiveness of the LGBTQ movement. Hey, what does it matter? It's not going to affect you. Now you're made to care. You're made to choose sides, right? That's dangerous.
Yeah.
Well, when it comes to Islam, eventually you're going to be made to care, right? So we don't need to fear. So we need to learn about this, as you're saying, not just in the current context of should Donald Trump send in troops or should he not? No. Go way back about another 3,000-4,000 years, and let's start understanding this.
Exactly.
So do not fear.
Right.
That's vital. Then it says, remember the Lord. Remember the one who is true. And we obviously come from a biblical understanding of who the Lord is. That is Jesus Christ. He is the creator. He's the redeemer. That is who we remember. And we remember who is great and awesome. We know what he has done. He has overcome sin and death. He has worked for his plan of redemption has been unfolding since the fall. And so we know that he's going to continue to work through that, through all this chaos.
Yeah.
Right? So therefore, we don't have to fear. We are remembering. And then this is the one that a lot of Christians don't want to do. It says, and then fight for your brothers, for your sons, your daughters, your wives, and your homes. Because we are against enemies that want to consume us.
Right.
And thankfully, we're at the point right now where we can talk about this. We're not talking about a physical fight right now. Right. Some places in the world already are.
Yep.
But right now, I'm not saying we rise up physically. But we need to fight the ideologies. Because if we do not stand up against those ideologies, we're going to see what is already starting to happen. We're going to see pride flags flying in the sanctuaries of churches. We're going to see pastors that are preaching against supporting Israel and preaching against the Jews, that they're the cause of all these problems, right? We're going to see that happen if we're not fighting against these ideologies, right? That is what we need to do. And it is hard, but this is what God has called us to do. So if you're overwhelmed if you haven't been thinking about this and all of a sudden you're listening to this podcast, I'm sorry, because we're going pretty deep, pretty quick.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But like Nehemiah says, don't fear. Remember who the Lord is, who is true, where truth comes from. And then let's start engaging and pushing back those ideologies, and also striving to change people who are deceived by those ideologies,
Yes, there it is.
bringing them into the truth, right? That's ultimately what all this is about. And
you're not talking about us changing lives. You're talking about coming to somebody who's life changing.
yes,
Just come to Christ.
come to Christ.
Yeah.
Yes, and He will change. Yes,
That's
no. So we're going to have to wrap it
yeah.
up. Man, we're going to have lots of conversations. I hope you stick with us. The world is changing rapidly. We don't want to be completely reactionary. We are trying to present a biblical viewpoint. And so, you know what? It shouldn't surprise us that Israel is attacking Iran and that Iran wants to destroy Israel. We shouldn't be shocked by this, right? So we don't have to react in the way that we look at what's going on there, the way that so many people, I mean, there's people that have been strong Trump supporters that are like, I'm out. This guy's horrible. I can't believe he's starting this. Ooh, everybody calm down. That's a reactionary place. We want to prepare people as Christians to understand what's going on, why it's going on, and ultimately that God is going to see us through all of this.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
And then just one last comment, because it was just like you said, the way people react, the reactionary thing. There's so many people that look at this and say things against Israel or even Islam, whatever. And so many of them aren't God following. They're not Christians. But what's funny is they're arguing for or against these two, Islam and Israel, which it's all based on God.
Yes.
You don't believe in them.
Yeah.
You're fighting for or defending one or the other. But this whole thing has to do with how they believe in God.
Yeah.
But you don't. So if you don't, why are you even arguing?
Yeah. No. So it's going to be fun.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us on our day after podcast. Went a little bit long, but hey, you know what? You can fast forward if you need to. I hope you do enjoy this. We are really trying to do this to make a difference in the kingdom of God and hopefully prepare for those who already know the truth, prepare us to how to engage our culture, and for those who are caught up in these ideologies to hopefully where we can give them a glimpse of the good, the true, the beautiful that comes from Christ.
Yeah.
And that's why we're doing this. So thank you so much for joining us.
See ya.